All right, so earlier today, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, he absolutely grilled Facebook founder, CEO Mark Zuckerberg over what appears to be the suppression of freedom of speech on his site. Let's take a look.
There are a great many Americans who I think are deeply concerned that Facebook and other tech companies are engaged in a pervasive pattern of bias and political censorship. There have been numerous instances with Facebook. In May of 2016, Gizmodo reported that Facebook had purposely and routinely suppressed conservative stories from trending news, including stories about CPAC, including stories about Mitt Romney, including stories about the Lois Lerner IRS scandal, including stories about Glenn Beck. In addition to that, Facebook has initially shut down the Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day page, has blocked a post of a Fox News reporter, has blocked over 24 Catholic pages, and most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page with 1.2 million Facebook followers after determining their content and brand were, quote, unsafe to the community. To a great many Americans, that appears to be a pervasive pattern of political bias. Do you agree with that assessment?
Senator, let me say a few things about this. First, I understand where that concern is coming from because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern that I have and that I try to root out in the company, is making sure that we don't have any bias in the work that we do.
Diamond and Silk? Unsafe to the community? This is ridiculous. All right, we'll have more on this and so much more tomorrow. Stay with the Fox News channel, continuing coverage. We're watching the events unfolding in Syria, and, of course, those of the deep state. Remember, this show will always be fair and balanced. You can always get to us on Twitter, at Sean Hannity, and Facebook and every other social media. Let not your heart be troubled, because Laura Ingraham is back on Monday. Oh, wait a minute, it's Tuesday.
Oh, you have no idea.
Already.
First of all, if Diamond and Silk are a threat to the community, what is the community? Isn't that everyone? Okay, so now everyone is a community.
They're like two of the nicest people.
Yeah, the nicest. I love them.
I know. I love them. They actually came to my Christmas party. You didn't come, but they came this year. I
got no invite. That's no surprise. But Hannity, how did you pass the threshold test? That's my question. How are you not unsafe for the community? I see
that's a good question.
Humming. I mean,
listen,
poor old
nobody would
Diamond
have
and
ever
Silk.
bet I'd be the last man standing at the original Fox team. Nobody made that bet, and if they did, they made zillions. They're richer than Zuckerberg.
Thanks so much, Sean. Awesome show tonight.
Have a good show.
All right, I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. A powerful lineup to bring you, including the continuing battle against the censorship of conservative voices. So what role exactly has Facebook played? Jeffrey Lord is here tonight to help us answer that. And speaking of Facebook, how much involvement do they actually have with Mueller's investigation?
Have you or anyone at Facebook been interviewed by the special counsel's office?
Yes.
Have you been interviewed?
I have not.
Others have.
I believe so, and I want to be careful here because our work with the special counsel is confidential.
The question we have tonight is, to what end? Well, we're going to examine it. And the air over Syria is eerily quiet tonight. We're learning a potential strike on Assad loyalists could come at any moment after he reportedly used chemical weapons once again on his own people. But where will those missiles originate from? We're on watch tonight. And we will get to tonight's angle in just a moment, which includes a message and some advice for the president. But first, the heavy-handed FBI raid of President Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, continues to reverberate at this hour. Tonight, Cohen is speaking out, saying this unprecedented act is upsetting to him and his family, but that he will cooperate, adding he still stands by the legality of what he did with that payment. So is Cohen using the media to communicate now with President Trump? Well, coming up tonight, we're going to talk with House Intel Chair Devin Nunes on what he thinks of the president's next steps with the Justice Department should be. But first, let's analyze all of this with John Iannarelli. He's a former FBI national spokesperson Democratic strategist and attorney Scott Bolden, and Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner and Fox News contributor. All right, we have a lot to get through tonight, guys. Byron, I want to start with you. Very interesting that Michael Cohen, who was kind of chased down the street, I think, today in that puffy down jacket of his, running through the street. I don't know, men in puffy jackets. We women don't like that. But let me just get to the point. Don't wear a puffy jacket. We don't like those. Okay, so they catch up with him eventually, but it's on the phone with Don Lemon and then with a reporter from ABC. Why is he going to media outlets that are fairly hostile to the president at this point? What do you think? It's curious.
Well, it's a good question. To some degree, there are a lot of people in the White House who actually communicate with the president through the media. They're trying to send him a message to the media, through the media. And one of the things about Cohen, if he talks about the hardship that this has been on him and has been on his family, obviously one of the issues here is if he were charged with a crime, would he cooperate and would he be a bigger part of the Mueller investigation? So these are all messages that are flying around as he talks tonight.
This is part of what he said in one of his interviews. I think we have a full screen. And he was talking about not only the hardship for his family. He was asked whether he's worried. He said, well, I'd be lying to you if I told you that I'm not. Do I need this in my life? No. Do I want to be involved in this? No. Scott Bolden, look, when the FBI, kind of knocks on the door, says, hello, thanks for your phone. Sit down and put up your feet for a while. It's worrisome.
Not just my office, but my home and my hotel. And let's remember one thing. Michael Cohen has been probably the most aggressive defender of Donald Trump. He's a very aggressive lawyer. He has a lot of swag, if you will, and attitude. But this is a humbling experience. And remember one thing. Before my Republican friends start blaming Mueller, this was relegated or delegated to the U.S. Attorney, another Trump Republican appointee who certainly had to review this along with a federal judge. So whatever they have on Michael Cohen, whether it's the women or bank fraud, wire fraud, they've got a lot. You've got to presume
it. Does it bother you, though? This started as presumably some type of Russian collusion investigation, which sounds pretty nefarious and pretty disturbing. And people who don't really follow this, like, Russian collusion, oh my God, what is Trump? And now we're like looking through a lawyer's hotel room and his daughters in his house and his office and looking for some like porn star. I mean, the Democrats were complaining not too long ago, and the Republicans were kind of not complaining, when an investigation into Whitewater, a land deal, ends up in a blue dress. And now the Democrats seem to be salivating over a impropriety, a personal impropriety that might have been, paid off by some lawyer. It's an odd deal, is it not?
Well, there's a lot of Republicans who may be salivating also. But here's the deal. As a former prosecutor and white-collar criminal defense lawyer, the investigation goes where the facts take them. And what we don't know is what all they have. And that's the bottom line.
And, Byron, we're going to get to the piece you wrote about what about the collusion in a second. But I want to go to John Iannarelli on this. John, set the stage for us, if you would. The FBI has this separate team that goes in to the office of Michael Cohen, to his residence, and to this temporary, I guess he's in a hotel room part of the time, and they go in and they take what? And how long does this typically take in a raid like this?
Well, let's keep this in absolute perspective. First of all, this is unprecedented. Never before have we had an attorney for a sitting U.S. president be the subject of a search warrant and an investigation. The FBI goes in, they're looking for documents, electronic devices, computers, anything that might have information for the target of the investigation of what they're looking for. All that is taken, depending upon the size of the house, which I imagine a large one. It's going to take hours, and it'll be a team of agents gathering everything and bringing it back for the FBI office for review.
What happens to the attorney-client privilege? People were laughing at this today. And look, I'm an attorney, you're an attorney, Scott. But the attorney-client privilege is sacrosanct. It does have exceptions, crime fraud exception, we all know very well. But nevertheless, that is sacrosanct. When you're talking about a personal attorney, you would imagine that they have information, significant information, they better have significant information that implicates this attorney in criminal wrongdoing. To go into his office, probable cause.
At least probable cause. But if I were looking at
this stinks to high heaven.
Well, if I were them and if I was DOJ and I was looking at it, they would even have to have a higher level, which would scare me if I'm the Republicans. But let's not forget about the tank team, because when they go into a lawyer's office, and while it may never happen to the president and his lawyer, I can tell you it's rare, but it is not unprecedented in general terms across this nation.
John's right. It's never happened to President of the United States. It didn't start with a Russian investigation. Now we're in a porn star pen. So the tank team says these documents are privileged communication, but these documents are about the porn star payment. So we'll put these over here. I guess that those will remain secret.
And these have to trust them to keep it.
Yeah, the 2 piles, 3
and they're
piles,
very
4.
trustworthy, though, and they always are, because they're professionals.
You're a former prosecutor. I wasn't a prosecutor. I was a former criminal defense attorney. I think prosecutors have way too much power in this country. If they want to indict you, they can indict you in most cases. Byron, you wrote about what happened to the Russian collusion. We're not even talking about Russian collusion anymore. We're talking about Stormy Daniels, and all the other networks are spending all their time on it because you can mention porn star 5 times a minute and they can get ratings.
Well,
what's going on with Russian collusion?
A couple of things. Collusion remains the heart of the investigation.
Exactly.
It is the big question, and these 2 things that have happened in the last 24 hours suggest that it's really not in the middle of the investigation anymore. One, the fact that Robert Mueller farmed out this investigation to the Southern District of New York suggests it's not in his core area, which is collusion. Exactly. The other thing is we found out about the search warrant for that no-knock raid on Paul Manafort's house last summer. It included looking for information about the Trump Tower meeting. That was back in July. We're 9+ months later. Yeah. He's been charged with lots of other things, but nothing involving collusion.
All right, gentlemen, I wish we could do an hour. This is where I wish we had a 3-hour show. That's what I do in radio in the morning. Back in the morning. All right, thanks so much. We got to get to another issue, though, because Trump's instincts versus the swamp, other issues actually matter out there, guys. That's the focus of tonight's Angle. All right, despite the endless media chatter about FBI raids and porn star payments, there are actually far more important stories that are simply being ignored by the mainstream media. And by the way, they're the ones that most affect the American people. So in spite of all the sideshow drama, I have to tell you tonight, President Trump is getting real results by largely following his instincts. Think about it. On the immigration front, when all the others were afraid, well, Trump called for serious border enforcement, and he named the threats facing the United States.
We will end the sanctuary cities that have resulted in so many needless deaths.
It is the policy of this administration to dismantle, decimate, and eradicate MS-13. I told Mexico very strongly, you're going to have to do something about these caravans that are coming up.
Oh, well, what became of that old caravan? Well, that caravan was largely dispersed. And whatever stragglers make it to our border, well, they'll be greeted by friendly members of the National Guard. Then there was North Korea. Well, the pundit class attacked President Trump for daring to threaten Rocket Man with fire and fury if, in fact, Kim Jong-un persisted with his nuclear ambitions. Well, now North Korea is at the negotiating table and willing to discuss denuclearization. Winning. And remember the chorus of naysayers that greeted Trump's announcement to slap tough new tariffs on China?
China is hitting back after President Trump appeared to raise the stakes.
Wait a second. I'm sorry.
It's such a surprise.
Who could have
imagined that we would be put in this terrible position?
Simply saying jobs, jobs, jobs is about as convincing as trade wars are good and easy to win.
How dangerous is it that the person who's negotiating this has his facts day in and day out wrong? And the person I'm talking about, Mr. President, is you.
Much more persuasive when you do that into the camera. Well, China is now blinking on trade, thank you very much. And President Xi just announced that China is going to be lowering tariffs on auto imports, including those from the United States. He also promised to protect the intellectual property of those doing business in China. Now, why would he be making such sweeping changes? I wonder. President Trump's political instincts, let's face it, they're really good. But there are 2 major forces seeking to frustrate that instinct. First, Congress. Now, it was congressional leaders who lashed the president over those proposed China tariffs. They also refused to fund his border wall. In fact, they misled him on the border wall. They're the same people who railroaded the president into that $1.3 trillion fiasco of omnibus spending bill. Remember, that last day, his instinct was to veto the bill. But under pressure from congressional leaders, the generals, and the military-industrial complex, well, he signed it. They sold this bill of goods to the president with the promise that it was going to bolster the military, which it does, and protect the country. But now, the president has buyer's remorse.
I say to Congress, I will never sign another bill like this again. To prevent the omnibus situation from ever happening again, I'm calling on Congress to give me a line item veto for all government spending bills.
Well, I have a question here. How does mounting debt and rising deficits make us stronger? How does that make America great again? It doesn't. And now, even the GOP leaders who created this funding nightmare are looking to pass a few, I don't know, show votes to demonstrate how fiscally responsible they are before the midterms. Oh, that's going to work. Well, the other force, the second force frustrating the president's instinct is the war lobby. He is now being dragged back into a conflict in Syria, which is a dangerous, complex international situation fraught with trouble. Assad is certainly a vicious, horrible dictator, and the civil war there has cost hundreds of thousands of lives. But he also helped wipe out ISIS, and he is protecting the Christian minority in Syria, no doubt about that. Assad is aided and protected also by Iran and Russia, further complicating matters. So any military action, even targeted, limited airstrikes, they can lead to unintended consequences and international conflict that we cannot predict from this point. Dragging us into another desert war, that's not what the president campaigned on. In fact, he ran against military adventurism in the Middle East.
In my opinion, we've spent $4 trillion trying to topple various people that, frankly, if they were there and if we could have spent that $4 trillion in the United States to fix our roads, our bridges, and all of the other problems, our airports, and all of the other problems we have, we would have been a lot better off. I can tell you that right now. We have done a tremendous disservice, not only to the Middle East, we've done a tremendous disservice to humanity. The people that have been killed, the people that have been wiped away, and for what? It's not like we had victory.
The president is most successful when he sticks to his conservative, populist instincts. Even when he was assaulted by the Bush, Graham, McCain establishment, he did the right thing. And why? Because the people were with him. It's part of the reason why he won this election. It's a major reason why he won this election. He's also best when he follows his political instincts, those raw political instincts that he has. And he's not talked into things by card-carrying members of the swamp who despise his agenda. Every time he lets the swamp lead, disaster follows. So my advice tonight to the president, stick to your agenda. Do not let investigations or Congress derail it or distract you. And a time when your numbers are up near 50%, and Congresses, they're cratering. You should be giving them advice, not the other way around. And that's the angle. Joining me now for reaction is historian Victor Davis Hanson, a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. All right, VDH, usually have you on in the morning on radio, but we have you on at night tonight, and you're even peppier at night. I know that for a historian. Your reaction to the angle, and then we're going to get into some of these other topics.
Well, I think you're right that it's inverse of what the so-called deep state establishment say. They said the post-war order was sober, judicious, and stable, and this guy came in without prior political office or military service and disrupted it. But what if it was the other way around? It was chaotic and it didn't make sense, and somebody without exposure to their protocols had a set of skill sets, sort of like John Wayne and the Searchers or the Bill Holden and the Wild Bunch, and he came in and said, this is ridiculous. And that's what he's doing in all of these instances that you pointed out, whether it was this crazy open border or was this nut with missiles pointed at us here in the West Coast, or whether it was NATO members not paying their contributions, and on and on. In Syria, to reply in particular, he's got a lot of dilemmas, though. He didn't create the situation. Russia was brought in after 40 years by Susan Rice and John Kerry, and then they assured us that there were no WMD. Susan Rice said that in January of last year. So Trump comes in, and there is WMD, and we've lost all sense of deterrence because of this leave-behind recessionals, and yet he doesn't want and can't get involved in the way that we did in Afghanistan and Iraq. So he's in between those two poles. And everybody who's suspicious of going in there are the people who supported Trump for just the reasons you said. And they're going to get angry about that because they're going to see that as a betrayal. On the other hand, all the people pushing him toward are never going to vote for him. They despise him.
And
so
a lot
he's
of the
in
people,
a no-win situation. What he's
yeah,
got to find, he's got to find a way to restore deterrence without getting involved, and that's hard to do.
Yeah, Adam Kinzinger, Congressman, we invited him on the show tonight. We're going to try to get him on later this week. He was asked today about whether Congress should give its imprimatur to military action in Syria. This is how it went.
I think what the president did a year ago in destroying 1/5 of Assad's air force was good. It was right. And I think we have to do that again. People are going to say that any use of military force is going to be World War III, or it's going to mean 300,000 troops in Syria. It isn't.
Does the president need to come to Congress to get authorization to do whatever that next military act is?
I don't think so.
Well, that's convenient for Congress. Then they're not on the hook if stuff goes awry or suddenly...
Well, that's exactly what Congress does. When they are against something, they say you have to come, and they're for something, you don't. And if it goes well, they join in on the take credit. And if it doesn't go well, it's orphan and it's your fault. So what Trump has to do, and he's got some really good advisors. I sleep soundly tonight because of Pompeo and Mattis and Bolton. And I think they're advising him that we have to stop this idea that you can hijack a U.S. boat or send a missile at a U.S. carrier or point nuclear weapons, but we can't go in and try to nation build and make them like Carmel, California. And between those two poles, we've got to do something. And I think there's a way to shock the Russians and the Syrians so that we don't have to get in there on the ground and get bogged down. But it's not easy. And we got to, first of all, we got to ascertain whether there was WMD. Remember, the Obama administration said chlorine doesn't count. That was the first poison gas ever used in World War I. It's not really WMD, so we were right. So we've had nothing but misinformation about the status of WMD going back to the Iraq War. Once we've got to ascertain, did they use WMD, and did they kill innocent children, and did they break their word, the Russians and the Syrians, and is our credibility on the line? If it is, we have to send a message, and we have to do it in such a way that we don't destroy the fragile political matrix that Donald Trump relies on.
It's a very complicated situation, and Professor, we appreciate your analysis. Yeah. And up next, House Intel Chair Devin Nunes, first interview since the FBI raid on Michael Cohen. Well, while the FBI has been busy raiding the president's lawyer's office to find Stormy Daniels documents, our next guest is spearheading the effort to find out why the Department of Justice opened the Russian collusion probe in the first place. Surprise, surprise, the DOJ won't give us straight answers. Joining me now exclusively, House Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, a Republican from California. Congressman Nunes, thanks for being on tonight.
It's great to be here.
You've been trying to get documents for as long as I've been doing the show. And
it's my lot in life.
Yeah, exactly. That's all you do is try to get
documents. From
and people have been asking, why is it that you haven't yet held anyone in contempt of Congress? That's a big deal to do that. You know, Eric Holder was held in contempt of Congress, as I recall, over the Fast and Furious documents. But what gives here? What do you
we've been in a situation where it's trickle-down documents. So we issued the subpoena in August. We walked through piece by piece. Every time we get a little bit more. As you know, we had to get out the major information, which was the information on the warrant against Carter Page, who was a Trump associate. So since that time, we've been investigating the State Department, and we especially have an interest in this electronic communication.
EC. I've never heard of the EC, which is the document that establishes the justification, correct, for ultimately naming the special counsel. This whole thing that ended up in the...
Not the special counsel, open the counterintelligence investigation.
Open the counterintel investigation initially that ultimately led to the special counsel.
Yeah, so it's a two-page document. I sent Chairman Gowdy over there to see it originally. It was fully redacted, so they couldn't read anything. I called back several times, had conversations with Rod Rosenstein and with Director Wray, the FBI director. Mr. Gowdy and the investigators went over there again, and there was only a few more things that were unredacted, so most of it was still redacted. So now we're at this point again, we're at a boiling point where we need this, what is only a 2-page document. It's only a 2-page, it's less than 2 pages from what I understand. And, you know, if the record wasn't that every time they hide something from us, that then we find out it was really bad and they hid it from us for a long time.
Like the Judge Contreras issue?
Like the text, like the FISA
struck page,
the warrants, the warrant that they got on Carter
So the
page.
trickle-down information, unredacted, oh, no, that's why you redacted.
Yeah, so now just the fact that they're not giving this to us tells me there's something wrong here.
Well, Robert Costa from the Washington Post is speculating tonight on Twitter that you are on the verge of moving to hold Christopher Wray and Rod Rosenstein in contempt of Congress. And you have a deadline of tomorrow, apparently, to get this information. Is this a real possibility tonight?
I can tell you this. We are going to get the document. We are going to get the 2 pages. So they can either cough them up now, or it will get really complicated starting tomorrow night, and we'll have to take all the steps necessary in order to get the documents.
What are you thinking might be in this document? I mean, are you going to intent
well,
from the beginning? An early insurance policy if Trump was actually the nominee or the ultimate victor?
Well, here's our challenge with this. So if you believe what's in the New York Times and Washington Post, so sometimes they actually do get leaked information. So
getting a lot lately.
In that leaked information that came out in December 30th, I think, of this year, was the information on an Australian diplomat talking to Mr. Papadopoulos. That's what they say is in the EC, but we haven't been able to see the EC to confirm that. So somehow the New York Times has it, the American people have read it, but the U.S. Congress does not have that information, and we have the full right to that information.
Are you disturbed by some of these leaks that seem to be emanating from the special counsel's office or from the U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District of New York, about the intent of what that raid on the Cohen office was, what they were really looking for, what they're speculating? Seems like a lot of information came out yesterday, last 24 hours.
Well, the bigger problem I have about the leaks, and I'll say this for the 100th time, the special counsel, I would have thought, would have got to the felony leaks of General Flynn's name being leaked to the press with very, very high-level information. And so it seems like the special counsel is good at leaking, but not so good at actually finding major felony leakers.
What are the chances you're going to hold them in contempt of Congress right now?
Well, I can just tell you that we're not going to just hold in contempt. We will have a plan to hold in contempt and to impeach.
To impeach Christopher Wray?
Absolutely.
Rod Rosenstein?
We're not messing around here. They're going to give these two.
They're going to say you're just Trump's lackey here. You're doing Trump's bidding. That's what the Democrats, they've been demonizing you from the beginning. I've been the subject of some demonization myself, so I know how it goes, but they're going to demonize you and say, oh, you're just going to run over the White House, help Trump out every time he's in a jam.
Yeah, well, as I said before, whenever I see evidence of Russian collusion, I'll be the first person standing there on the steps of the Capitol that I found the Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. I haven't found it yet, but I found a whole lot of other stuff that always puts DOJ and FBI in a bad light, unfortunately.
The media, the other media channels are salivating tonight in a frothy frenzy over, once again, Trump's going to fire Robert Mueller. Trump's going to fire Robert Mueller. Huckabee Sanders was asked about this today. This is what she said.
Rod Rosenstein oversees special counsel, and only he has the power to fire the special counsel.
Again, we've been advised that the president certainly has the power to make that decision.
I don't think there's any sign that Trump's really going to fire Mueller, but Republicans are freaking out about that as well. But
yeah,
he's keeping this thing going.
Yeah,
he clearly has the authority.
But they said this before.
Yeah.
He was firing all kinds of people, and none of that ever came to fruition.
Preet Bharara, the former U.S. Attorney, Southern District of New York.
He did get fired.
He did get fired by President Trump. Still very angry about this. This is what he said today.
The regulation is very clear with respect to the special counsel. It says the special counsel may be disciplined or removed from office only by the personal action of the Attorney General. And he may remove the special counsel for a number of enumerated reasons, including misconduct, dereliction of duty, incapacity, and some other things, and has to provide those reasons in writing. So it's very clear, that if the President of the United States called, under the current circumstances, and as long as these regulations are in effect, called up Bob Mueller and said, I'm firing you, Bob Mueller, I would expect, would not heed that.
Apparently the regulations trump the Constitution. We have an executive branch, judicial branch, legislative branch. In which branch does Bob Mueller reside? The executive branch. He doesn't reside in the I mean, who's the head? I mean, again, I think it would not be smart at all for the president to fire Bob Mueller. I do not think it makes sense. As tempting as it may be, I don't think it makes sense. But the idea that he doesn't have the constitutional authority to do that, whether it's politically smart, I mean, and Preet Bharara was U.S. Attorney. You have any reaction to that?
Well, it shows you how this is how far we've gone down over the last 8 or 9 years, where the courts have become activist courts, activist judges. The fact that DOJ and FBI think that they're above the law. So Congress, the legislative branch, we created these agencies, and they have a responsibility to give us documents when we ask for them. We have the appropriate clearances. That's why the House Intelligence Committee exists. So, you know, at the end of the day, we're going to win on this. And it's just a matter of how tough they're going to make it for Congress to actually do our job that under the Constitution, the priorities that we're given.
To hold someone in contempt of Congress, I don't know the process. You're the head of the Intel Committee. Do you need to have sign-off from others in the Intel Committee?
Well, there's a lot of different ways you could do it.
Really quick.
What we're doing now is that, well, ultimately, the Congress has to vote on it.
Okay. So,
how's that for quick?
Yeah, well, you think, what's the chances of that?
Well, I don't think we're going to have to get there because I think they're going to give us the documents.
We are going to follow this, and we're going to check up on it tomorrow. April 11th is the deadline, so tomorrow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Congressman.
Thank you.
And we're doing a little something different tonight. We're holding a caption contest. All right. Alabama won the college football national championship last season, and head coach Nick Saban and the team were honored at the White House today. Yes, I was there. Do you have a caption idea for this? Tweet me at Ingraham Angle, and we're going to read some of the best at the end of the show, and I took the photo. Up next, our Defending the First series. You do not want to miss this. All right, check this out. Last month, Rockland High School in California placed history teacher Julianne Benzel on paid administrative leave after she had the gall to question whether the school would let its students walk out. To do what? Well, to protest abortion in the same way it did to promote gun control. Now one of Benzel's students is putting her question to the test by organizing a pro-life walkout set for 10 a.m. local time tomorrow. Joining us now for more is Julianne Benzel herself. All right, Julianne, this is good because this is like, you're a hero of the First Amendment in my view, because the students in all the organizations who organized, and they did it really well, the March for Our Lives and the various walkouts that have occurred over the last month or so, they got huge participation. They got huge media coverage, and most of it was overwhelmingly positive and glowing. What have you found with your effort at your school?
Basically, the only large entity that I know of that has taken up this pro-life walkout cause is Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council. I was thinking, and to your point there, that perhaps there would be other, maybe a Clint Eastwood or a brave movie star from Hollywood, because they had George Clooney funding the gun protest walkout. I was hoping maybe for, a few other people to join, but you know what? It's all about grassroots, and what we are feeling at the pulse of the nation right now, particularly among young people, is extremely exciting.
Well, I think it's interesting that we're talking about saving lives, which we all want to do. We all want to have sensible, regulations that don't run afoul of the Constitution. And in this case, the dominant culture does not promote the cause of life. In fact, they call the cause of life anti-abortion rights advocates. That they don't refer to pro-life on CBS or MSNBC. I know, because I used to work at both places. They say you're anti-something. But I'm finding students across the United States, and you see this at the March for Life every year, Julianne, are much more open to the idea of, wow, this really is this is a human being. Why are we doing this to the new generation of Americans? We're just stuffing them out, million at a time. Every year, another million, whether by chemical abortion or by surgical abortion. And yet the media, they act like this viewpoint, this pro-life viewpoint, doesn't even exist.
Correct. Well, and that's precisely why my very brave student, Brendan Gillespie, chose to stage this as a pro-life walkout, not anti-abortion. We are for all life. We are for all students who have lost their lives by guns on school campuses, but this is a pro-life. Every life matters. And you're precisely right. I forgot her name right now, but the outgoing president of Planned Parenthood, who said that her goal was to destigmatize. Yes, that her book, her goal was to destigmatize abortion in the United States, and I'm sorry, but that has not taken place. Two recent articles that I just read gave very specific statistics that the majority of Americans and the majority of women are pro-life, not for abortion.
All right, Jillian, thanks so much. We'll be following what happens with this brave push to advance life in a different type of walkout. And now Facebook versus conservatives. It's a theme we discussed last night with internet stars Diamond and Silk, who did get some good press today, and it came up on Capitol Hill during Senator Ted Cruz's questioning of Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg.
Gizmodo reported that Facebook had purposely and routinely suppressed conservative stories from trending news, has blocked a post of a Fox News reporter, has blocked over 24 Catholic pages, and most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page with 1.2 million Facebook followers after determining their content and brand were, quote, unsafe to the community. Are you aware of any ad or page that has been taken down from Planned Parenthood?
Senator, I'm not, but let me just...
How about MoveOn.org?
Sorry?
How about MoveOn.org?
I'm not specifically aware of those.
How about any Democratic candidate for office?
I'm not specifically aware. I mean, I'm not sure.
Joining me now for a reaction is the American Spectator's Jeffrey Lord, continuing our Defending the First segment. Jeffrey, I thought that was a great exchange. He actually went on to say that he is concerned because Silicon Valley is very left, and he said it's a left of center place, and that's just what it is. And so he said we're very concerned about protecting and allowing all voices on the Facebook forum. But he didn't really have a good answer to Cruz, who he kind of met his match with Ted Cruz, about all these voices that are having trouble being heard. What was your reaction to that exchange?
Well, this is what concerns me. I mean, someone else on that panel asked him whether or not he could discuss the political leanings of his employees, and he said something to the effect that, well, he doesn't check them. The point is, Laura, he doesn't have to check them. He's getting his employees from a pool of people that he himself says are extremely left-leaning. That's what's going to happen here. And, you know, Laura, I have to laugh. This is the same argument that I was hearing when I was a teenager from people like Spiro Agnew, except it was about the technology of the day, which was CBS, ABC, and NBC. It is the same precise argument today, except we're dealing with Facebook or Google or Twitter or what have you. It doesn't change. What we're dealing with here are people who have a liberal bias, and I mean, Diamond and Silk, I could not believe that. I mean, I know Diamond and Silk. They're fabulous people. The notion that they are unsafe for the community, I mean, this is crazy. But that's the way the liberal mind works, and that's what you get.
Yeah, well, when they say
so
community...
the question is, how do we deal with it?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to get to that in a second. But when they say community, they mean the liberal community. They're offensive and unsafe to the left-wing mindset that dominates in Silicon Valley and through most of California. And so they are very concerned about that. And they're very concerned about it catching on through perhaps increasing popularity of President Trump. And again, Zuckerberg, obviously he's a really smart guy, but he did not have good answers when it came to those questions of why are these examples of conservative organizations, Ted Cruz rattled them all off, not getting adequate
That's right.
response on Facebook when they're where their followers are not getting their notices. Why is that happening? Facebook always gives some mumbo jumbo answer. You don't get a good response.
Right. And we need to be candid here. In the case of Diamond and Silk, if they were African-American women who were liberal, no one at Facebook would have blinked when they posted something. The fact that they're African-American women who love Donald Trump, that's not supposed to happen, and so therefore they've got to be curbed. That's the real problem here.
So what do conservatives do, Jeffrey? Again, we're concerned about defending free expression, freedom of conscience, the First Amendment. These corporations are so big, they're like mini governments. They can control, they can keep out. So what do conservatives do? Do they just stop using Facebook? Just delist on Facebook?
You know, I hate to go that route here. I mean, I just instinctively don't like this kind of thing. The boycotts and all of this. You know, I spoke to an advertiser who was boycotted several years ago by people who didn't like Rush Limbaugh, and he said to me, this was not a boycott, this was an organized terror campaign. His life was threatened, his business was threatened, his employees were harassed.
But if conservatives want to be part of the social media, just stick to social media. If they want to be part of the social media, which is important for connecting with friends or advancing, you know, your product lines or whatever it is, then Facebook is still really important. So is Instagram. So is, you know, Snapchat and all the other means of communication. I mean, and they're dominated by liberals. So what do you do?
Right. He got a question today about who was his competition. And, of course, effectively the answer was he doesn't have any. I would certainly hope that there are conservatives out there who are young and enterprising and entrepreneurial-minded to challenge this. I mean, that certainly can be done over time. But other than that, at the moment, I think that your series here on defending the First is excellent. We have got to publicize this, get the word out, whether it's on television or the internet or in print, and let people know how this game is working, because it's not a good one.
And I think that's right. And let's take Zuckerberg at his word. He wants all voices to be heard. He wants the community to be, you know, their information to be said. Okay, take you at your word. Now let's see the proof. Jeffrey, thanks so much. And despite the constant hysterics, there's no trade war to report on tonight, but we will tell you about Trump's trade victory with China and what it means for you, your pocketbook, and our security when we come back. Oh, a favorite scare tactic used by the establishment of both political parties is to claim that President Trump is about to start a trade war with China. You heard some of that at the top of the show. Well, rather than a war, Chinese President Xi Jinping promised yesterday to cut auto tariffs and pledged to open China's finance industries to foreign investors. Joining us now for reaction is East Asia expert and author of Nuclear Showdown, Gordon Chang. Gordon, I've got to say, people think I'm really weird, but the China issue, in my mind, is literally the most important issue facing the United States today for so many reasons. This was astounding news yesterday. President Trump has gotten literally zero credit, except from a few senators. Tell us how significant this is.
This is really important because over the last week, we've heard from China's Ministry of Commerce, and we've also heard from the Chinese ambassador in the U.S. how everything is on the table, really vicious language, how they won't negotiate.
Market up and down, down mostly.
And what's happened is Xi Jinping blinked. What he did was he backed down on a very important issue, China tariffs, also on intellectual property. Now, of course, it's going to take some time for implementation, but the important thing here is that President Trump has pushed him off the center, and I think that Trump's going to continue to push him, so we're going to get him to a place where we need to be.
Why Trump took on China, is taking on China, just so people understand how important this is. Chinese theft of American intellectual property or trade secrets and so forth currently costs between $225 billion and $600 billion annually. And the U.S. trade deficit in goods and services rose to $566 billion last year, the biggest since 2008. Imagine what we could do with that $566 billion. Marco Rubio actually has been very good on this issue. Today he tweeted, "This offer of opening China market is a total farce. It's unbelievable to read how Xi said that openness leads to progress while seclusion leaves one behind, while his government has dramatically increased control of the internet." That was commenting on why we still have to be very skeptical of what China is doing. this is just the beginning. Do we need to be cautiously optimistic here?
This is just the beginning, but for the first time since Eisenhower, you have an American president who understands the Chinese threat, understands America's leverage, and is willing to use it. We look at these China tariffs that are so unreciprocal and that were basically negotiated. We agreed to those in the Clinton administration when China acceded to the World Trade Organization, the global trading body. That's our fault. We've had a series of presidents who thought that, supporting China's Communist Party was more important than supporting American interests.
The establishment turns out to be wrong. Again, Trump right on this tariff thing. It's the only thing that got China's attention. Gordon Chang, I'm going to have you on radio this week. And next, despite the raft of MS-13 crimes in the state, Virginia's Democrat governor goes soft on sanctuary cities. What's going on with that? A debate next. Virginia's Democrat governor, Ralph Northam, campaigned as a moderate, but he moved far to the left yesterday after he vetoed a bill that would have banned sanctuary cities in the state. That's quite a bold move for a state that's no stranger to violence from the notorious MS-13 gang. Joining us now for reaction debate, Corey Stewart. He's a Republican running for Senate in Virginia, and Mark H. Levine, who's a Democratic delegate to the Virginia House of Delegates. Gentlemen, it's great to have you both on. All right, let's start with the state delegate here. Now, I live in Virginia, love Virginia, went to school at the University of Virginia, but I am appalled by this decision by the governor. I remember back, I think it was Valentine's Day of last year, and that recorded confession of an MS-13 gang member and what she did in this murder. Let's watch it.
You need to tell me what you did to her.
I killed her.
How did you kill her?
Pero no, te vas a recordar de mí hasta el día que los vayamos a ver al puto infierno.
And you're going to remember me until the day we see each other in hell.
Y que no se te olvide mi nombre.
And don't forget my name.
A vicious, brutal murder. This isn't the first time this happened in Virginia. Why would Virginia want to welcome illegal immigrants to live in the state when you do not know what their desires are, what their aims are, what their goals are, or whether or not they are criminals beyond just entering the country illegally?
So I'm really glad that Governor Northam vetoed this bill. If this bill became law, no one would celebrate more than the MS-13, because the bill doesn't actually do anything. It's already preempted by the Constitution. The federal law already preempts state law. But what the bill would do is would encourage victims not to talk to the police. It would make law enforcement really hard, because someone who's beaten up or tortured or by the MS-13, they wouldn't go to the police. They'd be afraid that they might be deported. So if you want to stop crime, let the local authorities stop crime by letting witnesses speak out.
So if you want to stop crime, allow more people into your state that are illegal border crossers who've already committed an offense and oftentimes commit more offenses through document fraud, taking government services, etc. How is that making the state safer, the Commonwealth safer for the average person? We've got to get Corey in on this. We'll get back to you. That is the argument, and it's made by the Hispanic community. Others who are in the state, Commonwealth illegally, say, look, we're here, we're already here, we're working. Let us stay. Don't inflict this on us. We will actually report crimes.
That's what the left always does. They just pull this out of the air. There's no basis in truth. We've been doing this in Prince William County. I led the toughest crackdown in the country on illegal immigration in Prince William County, right next to Fairfax. So far, 10 years later, we've apprehended 8,121 illegal aliens, handed over to the ICE. The crime rate dropped in half, and not a single case of racial profiling. What the delegate here has said that would happen in Prince William County, they said that 10 years ago, hasn't happened. Let law enforcement do its job, apprehending criminals, whether they're illegal or not. But if they're here illegally, we have an extra weapon that we can use to remove them from our community so they can't commit brutal rapes and murders like that one.
So studies consistently show that native-born American citizens commit crime at a far greater rate than undocumented immigrants.
So let's support them and keep the illegal. What is that argument?
Let's put all,
I don't understand that argument.
Let's put all criminals in jail, and let's not have crimes reported less.
Okay.
You know, if fewer crimes reported in Prince William County, because victims are afraid and they take the domestic violence, they take the rape, and they don't report it.
I know a lot of my fellow Virginians who are afraid. They're living.
The law does nothing. You understand?
They're living in places like Sterling, which used to be a kind of a rural community. They're living out in Manassas. They're living in Alexandria, where you represent. And they don't even recognize the communities in which they live because there's more criminality. There's less of a feeling of cohesiveness in the community. I disagree. I've lived here just as long as you, if not longer, and I find the attitude that, well, they don't commit as much crime. First of all, I don't care if one American dies in Virginia by the hands of an illegal immigrant who shouldn't be here. Are we going to say, oh, but all the other people are good? One person's dead.
Why do you consider one murder worse than another? If someone's murdered by a citizen...
because we don't need any more murder.
The answer is we should let law enforcement be unhampered and enforce the law and go after everybody, whether they be citizens or undocumented.
Why do you want more problems in your community?
Because undocumented immigrants bring fewer problems.
So here's the problem with the left.
Oh my God!
If you want to stop the MS-13,
then bring in more illegal immigrants.
Then you allow people to talk to the police.
What?
Yeah. And you don't say, hey, if you talk to the police, we're going to deport you.
No,
that causes more crime.
No, we're going to say, okay, go, sorry, Corey.
Well, what the sanctuary cities are trying to do, what these left-wingers are doing in Richmond and in Charlottesville and now in Fairfax County, the largest jurisdiction.
You know that,
that's not true.
He's saying de facto.
They're not going to allow ICE to pick up these dangerous criminal illegal aliens. And here, let me tell you something.
If ICE has a warrant, they can
what
pick
you're
them
talking about is letting law enforcement do their job.
Right.
The problem with you liberals is you're telling them not to do their job.
No,
that's the problem.
Their job is not immigration enforcement. It's enforcing local.
All right. We are out of time, but I could do an hour with you guys.
Let's come back.
Oh, please do. And we're going to be right back with the winner of the caption contest from today's event, the White House with Alabama football.